May, and he was, dirty and matted and awful. They took him in for his vet check, and they discovered that's
Should have brought my glasses.
so he needs a little bit of special care. A lot of people. I hope.
Morning, Shannon.
Should we start?
Cool. I'd like to call to order the Breckenridge Social Equity and I would like to call to order the March 18th meeting of the Breckenridge Social Equity Advisory Commission. And Scott or Helen, would you like to do roll call?
Yeah.
Here.
Isa is absent. Jay,
Here.
Ash,
Here.
Sylvia.
and Joe Twan.
Present.
Present.
Lori is actually gonna patch in.
Nope.
Cool.
Also missing Carol.
Carol.
Carol, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have a very action-packed meeting today. So we have the discussion and approval of the agenda.
No changes, sorry.
No, there's no changes.
Motion to approve.
I move to approve the agenda.
Oh, love that. I second. No, that's good.
And then approval to approve the minutes from January and February.
I have just one comment. The substance is great, but there are a couple of typos and my name is spelled wrong. What? Yeah, there's an S on the end. So if we could just correct that. Otherwise, I move to approve.
I second that approval with those notes.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. And then I'm not sure, we had the Pocket Talk locations and training recently. I'm not sure if everyone was able to get on that Zoom call. Brooke sent out the email for that. But then she also sent up a follow-up with the PowerPoint as well as the videos that were included, which was really cool. I got a chance to watch those. I didn't get a chance to be on the Zoom, but it was really nice to see like the introduction to that.
Yeah, I was on the in the Teams meeting and man, those things are really easy to use. I think they're great.
Love that.
Love like how they do both voice and text.
Mhm.
I think that's a really nice inclusion. Thank you so much, Sylvia, for helping find those and
Yeah,
getting that all together.
excited that they're out and about now.
And then, let me just find where those locations are, unless someone else has them already. Okay.
Town Hall front desk is one. These are all, front desk of the rec center has two, and the rest of these have one. Town Hall front desk, Community Development front desk, Finance front desk, HR front desk, ice rink, Nordic/golf front desk, and there's one floating device that will live with the community outreach communications office.
Nice.
There also, I think two were there, correct? There are
Yeah.
two at the Welcome Center front desk.
Thank you.
Scott, would you like to continue on about yes?
Sure. I spoke with Senia and she was unable to come today. She's actually out of town currently, but will be back and eager to be part of the April 15th discussion. So I was hoping that if you all have any ideas or how we want to structure that conversation, I think she's eager to be here maybe we'll ask her to give a rundown of exactly what they're working on currently and what some of their efforts are, and kind of by extension, what we can do to support those efforts. But I would love to hear anything specific that y'all want to hear and you want to talk about.
Can we submit our ideas after this meeting? I I got nothing right now.
At the moment, I don't as well, but I would love to learn what they are working on to see where we can be more involved into what like subcommittees that might potentially fit in.
Mhm.
It might be more in like the community outreach and education or engagement subcommittee, just to kind of partner with them on some of their projects and then start to use that community resource guide just to make sure that their events as well are more accessible to everyone, just to help kind of broaden their engagement in the community as well.
Mhm.
Cross promotion and making sure we're supporting that.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and just because we're still all learning with like just the event creation side of things, like what aspects of our community can be involved and how to be involved with it, like signers and teletypists and just those concepts are still pretty new. So just making sure that the things that they're planning are accessible to those like people as well in our community. And I'd still really like to do the Braille event with June. Because I think that will be really fun and it's a lot to learn there as well.
Great, thank you. I had a question, and I know Carol was asking about how the partner meeting went. It's been a while, but how the partner meeting went regarding the equity blueprint, and I was in attendance for that. I believe you were there too, Jay.
Yep, and Joe Twan was as well.
Yep, Joe Twan. I just want to make sure that we just circle back on that and give a quick rundown of what we saw and thought and takeaways from that, if that helps. I'm happy to give mine, but I'd love to hear from y'all.
I guess I would love to see more of the notes that were given back on each of the blueprint plans, because I know everyone had the sticky notes. So I'd just like to see like that information for the group, just because it was specific to each subcommittee and a lot of our goals and tasks that we had. So I think that could be helpful for like our planning and kind of engagements with a lot of the groups. Joe Twan, did you have?
Jay, I would agree on that one too. I was kind of wondering what happened to that feedback that we had gotten, because we had like several different entities from all over the community that were giving advice in terms of their takeaways from the equity blueprint, but also trying to, I guess, create their own like sort of versions of this sort of equity blueprint. And so it would be nice to see that feedback from those sticky notes in terms of what they were providing us.
Great, we can compile that for the next meeting. If that works for you.
Hectic keeping all those together in the wind that day. Scott, what did you think?
Again, what was written in here, I felt like it was very well attended. For one, I thought it was interesting to see the various groups that showed up and participated and provided feedback, which I thought was great. And my sense was I looked at the sticky notes. We'll compile them a little more formally, but a lot of were kind of questions and and honestly, how do we being whatever entity they're representing implement the same kind of thing? So I think the biggest takeaway for me was certainly some feedback and some of the suggestions they had for revisions, but maybe more importantly, how do they get the support to continue to do something similar? I think they were very impressed with the fact that this document exists and has been approved, and they would love to see that same model going forward. That was sort of my impression. So if we can provide, I think we collectively, serve as a resource to other communities, other entities to help implement something similar. I think that was my biggest takeaway.
That was we had two attendees from Breckenridge history, and both of them were really hyper positive about the presentation of the blueprint. And we had made arrangements for the equity lens to be presented to our entire staff. And that hasn't happened yet, but I think that we'd love to go forward with that.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. I hadn't heard that part, June. Sorry, I didn't catch that that was a request. So we will make that happen.
Perfect. I'm sorry, I did not introduce that section properly. It was our staff summary section.
Yeah.
And then if we're all set with staff summary, I would like to invite down Melissa and Tessa from the BTO.
Hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us. Of course.
Can you hear us on the screen? Does this work? Okay.
Lovely.
I am Tessa Breeder with the BTO. I've had the pleasure of meeting most of you, and this is my lovely coworker, Melissa, who heads up our PR efforts for the tourism office.
Mhm.
Um, so feel free to interrupt us at any time. We really wanted this to be a discussion. But really just kind of wanted to go over some of the BTO's kind of inclusivity efforts, and especially as they relate to our marketing and kind of how we're projecting Breckenridge as a brand to guests. And so the BTO is pretty unique in that we are a destination marketing and management organization. And so we are not a convention and visitors bureau. We are not a chamber of commerce. And so we really are kind of in a very kind of specific lane, if you will, which is a little bit unique. And so we are specifically tasked from Lovely Town Council with bringing overnight destination guests. So out of state overnight guests that are going to be here for a good amount of time is always the goal. So we're never marketing in state. We're never marketing to the Front Range. So if you are seeing our marketing efforts, something has gone very wrong because those should not be in front of you at any point. And so kind of one way to think about the BTO is really the kind of two sides. We have the marketing efforts, which again, out of state overnight always, and then specifically for summer and fall guests, since we know the resort handles the lion's share of winter marketing. And so the other side of the BTO is really the management side. And that's really the piece that we've started growing pretty progressively just over the last few years. So really trying to encourage guests to be good stewards while they're here and giving them the tools to do that. So any questions on kind of our objectives with the BTO? Okay. And so Melissa is going to talk some about kind of the marketing side of it and our inclusivity efforts there, and then potentially some opportunities we might have to work better together or some things for the future. So
Yeah. And again, really just hoping this can be a discussion, much less than a presentation. And so really, as Tessa said, our goal with marketing, if you think about paid marketing efforts, all of that money truly is being put towards out-of-state overnight guests. We supplement that with a few different channels, including public relations. And so what I'm doing is working with journalists, bringing them into town, helping them cover Breckenridge in its storytelling efforts, as well as working with influencers and working on social media. We have Kerry, who's a great new social media manager for us. And so through these different efforts, I would say public relations, social media influencers are more of those cross-functional outlets where you're going to see them if you're local, you're going to see them if you're out of state. And so that's really where we focus on that branding and storytelling. So marketing, it's pretty traditional. We're putting display ads out. We're using models to represent how great it is to come to Breckenridge. And then PR and influencers and social media, it's much more organic. It's much more about what's interesting going on in the community that we can highlight. And how can we bring that to light to help show that Breckenridge is a cool place to be in general, whether you live here or you want to come here to visit. And so I would say at a general sense, that's kind of where we're standing. I think our greatest opportunity in the space of showcasing the local tapestry of Breckenridge is in this PR social media influencer space. Not that we don't through our marketing, we always tap, well, we try to tap local models. We get some people from Denver. We kind of get whoever we can get. Yeah. Jay's been our model before.
Here.
Uh-huh. So I would say, you know, in that sense, there's always opportunity to showcase locals in our models for marketing, especially if you know any families. We love those cute kids. And then social media, I think more and more we're actually trying to sort of create more off the cuff content, jump into trends. And for that, we really don't want it to just be Carrie, Jace, myself, Tessa, you know, on screen all the time. And so I think same thing, if you are ever open to it, we'd love to be able to like give you a call and be like, hey, we need a model to do something goofy on social media. So all of that being said, yeah, I'm kind of just rambling about what we do, but what questions do you have for us about marketing, how we take on these different channels and what opportunities we have to move forward?
Good question. I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're inviting people to the table for storytelling, for instance,
Yeah.
what types of stories are you encouraging them to tell?
Great question.
Thank you.
So typically I start with what's new.
Mhm.
That's kind of what you'll see in the DMMO download like every other week. Tessa helping me find what's new in town. So the Carlin, for example, was a really great what's new story. It was something different, something you don't see in the travel industry all that much. And from there, besides just new business efforts, I think I'm really intrigued by nonprofits, people who are doing community building, things that are maybe a new take on an event, a new offering of a tour or an excursion or experience. And all of that's really cool. That's kind of the bread and butter of what we do in PR.
Okay.
I think underlying for that though is things like who is cool and who is interesting and who's doing something that maybe is worthwhile in a storytelling sense. I would say that's the stretch goal for myself and our PR agency is to get more stories like that. And typically related to the brand of Breckenridge. So is it really cool culinary professionals who are pushing the envelope, or is it the mountain biking world and venture birds and how they're bringing people together and helping lift up voices from the women identifying community? So things like that I think are also really interesting to me. And what I love to do is when I have writers come to town, I keep looking at Eliana because she has helped me with this so much. When I have writers come to town, pair them up with the people in our community who are kind of cool and different and not just me telling them about Breckenridge. Yeah.
And it is worth noting, every influencer you hosted last year was representative
Of a DEI community. Yeah. So I will say, like, when it comes to influencers, if I'm just giving someone a chunk of money to talk about Breckenridge, I don't want to just give it to the typical person that everyone thinks is already coming to Breckenridge. I'd rather say, like, here is an accessible adventure mom, or here is a family who's bilingual and Hispanic from Texas. Like, I want to sort of bring those voices to light when it comes to our influencer marketing. And that's still a goal.
Yeah.
And actually this year, I have made the determination to try to tap into a local influencer. So someone maybe in the like 3,000 to 10,000 follower range and growing, who can be representative of what it means to live in Breckenridge, how cool it is here, and really kind of tap this person to be kind of like a spokesperson. I mean, a multi-month contract where they're just talking about Breckenridge and creating content and really sort of tapping into that. And I'm not taking credit for that idea because that was your idea and it came through to us from Scott a few weeks ago. I think when we were setting this up, he was like, we should tap into the locals. And I was like, we should tap into the locals. I agree. And so that's kind of a tentative strategy right now. But that's really where the plan is. And so if we can find the right person, you know, unfortunately, I don't think I can just call anybody an influencer if they've only got 500 followers who are their friends. But if there's, you know, somebody who has a little bit of that extra reach, then I think it's a really cool way to showcase. I firmly believe that because it's cool to live here, it's cool to visit here, not the other way around.
Well, and all of our research shows that people love the authenticity. I mean, that's the same reason that we are all here, I'm sure. And so we really try to represent that in the branding, that
Mhm.
this is going to be a place where you can go to the bar and the mayor might be serving you or,
Yeah.
things like that, or
Yeah.
commissioner.
Yeah.
And so we really try to push that in kind of as much as our management messaging. At this point, I think we also
think
tried to
both,
include,
yeah.
yeah, kindness and inclusivity and pretty much ingrained in all of our messaging at this
Yeah.
point.
It is a BTO goal added within the past 2 years to advocate for Breckenridge as a welcoming and inclusive destination. So that is in writing. It is part of our mission. And so that has now trickled down into the sub-department goals. So the marketing goals, PR goals, and so on. It's something we're really focusing on. Any other questions?
And,
Go ahead.
is there any more to talk about for the Journalists for Pride?
Yeah, yeah. So, so much. You guys are the best for keeping us on track. So 10 Mile Pride is of course coming up, and we're excited for a few different elements of that event. Of course, it's going to have some really great community activation. That's what it's designed for this year. But we did contract Dean Nelson, or we're in the works of contracting Dean Nelson, who was our consultant last year. Pretty much the best person you can get in the space of Pride-related events. And he's going to help us with visioning for this event, and giving it some thought around whether this is designed to be just a community event or if Breckenridge ought to be in the space of Aspen and these other big names as destination driving Pride events. And in which case that would then become BTO, right? Destination driver comes to us.
Sure.
And if that's not the right thing to do, then it's a great community event. But we're really glad to have Dean to help us think through that. Related to this year's event, we have the opportunity to host about 4 journalists who are interested in coming to Breckenridge during Pride, experiencing not only the event, but then also just experiencing the destination. So right now we've got an editor with Passport Magazine, which is a leading LGBTQ travel magazine. He's going to help us really plan this press trip. He's our first one on board, but we've got quite a few names of other people we'll tap to invite. And so we're excited about that. I think we'll bring them over to the Bunkhouse Lodge. We'll have them experience all that Breckenridge has to offer, and really hopefully getting our brand out there as a destination in outlets like Passport, in addition to just a little bit of extra buzz about Pride. Yeah.
Be sure to include history, Breckenridge history.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with our history for the gay community. It is so impressive. Do you guys know?
We'll leave that to
I'll let you.
No.
Okay.
It's a different take.
I remember learning about last year, there was there was a point in, I think the 70s, I think it was like 50 years ago, where the state of Colorado basically put a ban on,
It's 1990s.
yeah,
We're known as the hate state.
yeah.
Yeah, so, that's my little bit of a different take.
But then Breckenridge, the town council passed an ordinance that protected gay rights. They said, well, if you're in Breckenridge, we're here for you and we're here to support you. And I was really impressed by that part.
So, yeah, our more modern history is very interesting. And it blends with the authenticity of our town that we are trying to promote. Yes.
Well, June, if you want to talk history for Pride, I think that'd be a really cool element of incorporation. So we can have you pop by and talk with Sarah and Majay and myself, and we can maybe think about how the full story and the
Yeah,
story that may
Yeah,
be, yeah.
the ugly and the good, the bad,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Let's weave it
better,
in. Yeah,
and the getting better. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
I had a question, but of course it escaped me. But I had 2 questions, so I have one. So I I always mention this whenever there's representation that needs to be brought to the table.
Mhm.
And for me, the most important thing is tokenism and not to do that. It doesn't sound like you are, just letting you know. It's really important for not only you guys to understand like why the stories and the conversations are important to be brought to the table, but I want the people that you're then asking those stories from to understand why that's important for them to share their, message. And I don't want them or me or whoever to feel like it's just kind of for performative purposes. You know what I mean? So I think you guys are doing great. I think it's always something to keep at the front of your mind, and just understand how to maneuver away from that kind of representation.
When it comes to tokenism and
Mhm.
avoiding it,
Mhm.
do you have guidance, tips, or advice? I think we try our best, like we do,
Mhm.
but you never know if you're missing the mark. Sometimes it happens even without that intention.
Mhm.
So is there any advice you have on that front?
So I feel like for me, when I feel tokenized, it's more of like maybe there's not really a reason for me to give my story. And it's just like, you want my specific story because of who I am. Like there has to be context to it, in my opinion. Now, of course, I have things to talk about that maybe don't have anything to do with me being an African-American woman, but that's the whole point, is like, I want you to hear my whole story and not just the aspects that pertain to me being an African-American woman. Does that make sense?
That does make sense.
Does anyone else have any, I don't know, like personal examples of tokenism for them? No. Great. So that's great. Yeah. So I mean, that's something that comes to like a low hanging fruit. Also just what questions you're asking. Again, it comes back to like what you're trying to get out of that person. But yeah, just, I don't know. Yeah. I think also including their truth. So if there are things that might be negative, I don't think that that's something that you should edit out. Maybe, but I think it's important for the truth as well. So whatever that looks like for those people.
Thank you. Yeah.
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 Mhm.
I think an honest portrayal
Mhm.
to whomever you're working with.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because we all have kind of the ups and downs in life. So I think that path and journey should be
Looks
told
like-
in that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also maybe just like, don't just hit them up on Black History Month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like maybe don't just hit them up in June. Like let's do like a 365 representation, that would help avoid tokenism as well.
Taj, I hear what you're saying. I can't vocalize comments to that one, but I do hear what you're saying, Taj. I got it quite a bit as the only Black educator in the school district.
Mhm.
And there's a lot more to me than just being a Black educator.
Correct. Thank you.
I appreciate your comment on there's got to be context
Mhm.
and 365.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it needs to be relevant. Like I think that, if you want to create a diverse group of people to come to Breckenridge, your cool is different than my cool is different than your cool. So although we highlight the things that make Breckenridge cool, who is creating that narrative of what's cool? So yeah.
I like that. Who's creating the narrative of what's cool?
Mhm.
I think we'd love to keep exploring that.
Mhm. I agree. I think it's important.
Mhm.
Mhm. Does anyone else have any plugins?
Yeah, I just had one other question. Sorry, Joe Tom, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
I just wanted to know if there were any other markets that you're working in this year that you haven't in years past to get some more diversity here into town.
That's a great question. Christine would have known that better than I do. On the PR front, we're just now tapping or exploring which markets, regional markets, we want to tap into for influencers. For our traditional pitching, this year we actually took a different approach than years past. So in years past, we would do what's called a desk sides. And that's where I would go to Texas, Austin, and sit down with 15 different writers all in a row, just go to their desk, sit beside them, tell them to come to Breckenridge. And I think we found that that's really limiting. And that puts a heavy emphasis in one market. And maybe it's got a diverse mix of people there, but it's always going to be, it's still just Austin, Texas, you know?
Mhm.
So this year we're doing virtual desk sides and media mailers. So we actually were able to tap a much more diverse mix of journalists to invite to come to Breckenridge this summer, than honing it in on just a specific region.
Mhm.
So I didn't dig too much into what geographic markets they live in. We really worry much more about outlets,
Mhm.
which is why we have more interest in Passport Magazine and Travel Noir and kind of a cool mix of outlets that we could pitch this year through this format. We've got a few different bilingual outlets down in Florida and Texas. So, or I guess Spanish outlets, but we speak to them in English and then they produce in Spanish, which is great.
Mhm.
And so I think in that sense, we're taking a much more, again, diverse approach for PR, but I can find out where we're spending money this year. I mean, just the geographic markets, and deliver that info if you'd like to see it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Joe Twan.
Oh, you're muted.
Yep, I'm sorry. I was just wanting to know a little bit more too, kind of piggybacking on Jordan's questions about those additional markets. The accessible adventurer. How are you guys tapping into that and what does that marketing look like?
That's a great question. We had an influencer last year whose literal handle was Accessible Adventures. I'm like, you hit the gold with that one. Like that is such a great Instagram handle. This year we don't have any PR lined up yet in that space, and I'm not sure that marketing we really do any like paid targeting around that. I think
Mhm.
that'd be a little bit hard to find and probably ethically ambiguous. But in terms of our models, I will say that's a gap. That's a really great thing that I'm glad you brought up because that's something that we haven't tapped into with models, and I don't think we have much assets around. So last year's Accessible Adventures was a good start, but it was really just kind of one step. So thank you, Joe Twan. Yeah.
And this is on the management side, so it's not what's being marketed, but for kind of post-arrival and my side of things, we do have an adaptive activities guide that we hand out at the Welcome Center that's available in the concierge box. And we also highlight some accessible adventures and stories within our visitors guide as well. Big feature on DOEC.
I just thought of something that made me think of like a bigger picture. Or this past month, February, I was scrolling through TikTok as we all do. And there was this video that had maybe like 300,000 likes and a ton of views. And it was basically this group of African-Americans who planned a black ski trip to Breckenridge. Don't know if you guys knew about that. But I feel like that was I saw it and I was like, oh my God. Like they're going to be coming to Breckenridge. And I was excited for the representation that was going to be there. And I just thought of it'd be cool for things like that if you guys catch wind I don't want to say, I think you should, like things like that maybe are good things to highlight, however that looks for you guys. But just things that maybe you don't have a hand in planning, but also are like aware that it's happening. I think it'd be cool to shed light on that because I thought it was cool.
There's check it out. It's like Soy Sauce Nation. It's a group of like, it's only snowboarders, but they're like going into skiing. But I know one of my roommate's boyfriend, he's like a huge like part of that, but they do like 3 or 4 different like ski trips in Colorado. And I don't think they've been to Breck yet, but that would be a really good group to like, be like, yo, what's up? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that. And oftentimes what's great is that it's happening without us. Right?
Mhm.
That's an indicator that the space we have is one that these groups feel comfortable to plan around.
Mm-hmm.
And then I agree. I think when possible, if we can highlight that it happened, that's really cool. In some ways, I think I think if Carrie wanted to repost, that'd be really cool. We typically have to find the content to then repost it.
Mhm.
But also I don't want to like claim something that's not mine,
Yeah, I personally don't think it would be, well, it depends on how you go about it.
Yeah.
But I think that there's a way to highlight it,
That it happened.
in an important way that I would find my cup would be full. I could also see it where I'm like, what the, you know, so if you need guidance,
Yeah.
can ask. But yeah, I think there's a way to go about it to where it be very tasteful, respectful, important, you know, and then there's also another way that you could do it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't
But I
be
do
good.
think, so separate from that, these groups like actually Soy Sauce Nation, I just discovered the other day, and like Black Packers and Unlikely Hikers, like I've started, this might sound bad, I've started a list
Yeah.
of all these groups that I can possibly find because I do see opportunity to potentially sponsor a group like that to come to Breckenridge.
Mhm.
For us, it's going to be summertime.
Mhm.
So even though I love seeing the African-American groups out on the mountain skiing,
Mhm.
we don't touch winter.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we'll probably look for something in the summertime that we can do, like I think there's a Black 14ers group. We could get them up on Quandary. So
I won't be there, but that'll be great for them. That'll be great.
so absolutely opportunity there. And I think it would be great, honestly, for this group to help help identify, you know, if I do the research, if you guys can help me choose, like, okay, this one is a market that maybe we want to feel more invited, or this one, you know, I heard bad things about this one. I don't know.
Mhm.
So that could be an opportunity for us to work together.
Absolutely. Thank you. Anybody else have any plugins? No?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Question before we roll out, if that's
Yeah.
okay, just to circle back to the pride for a minute. There was discussion at the subcommittee level about, as we talked about, this is local activation, community-based, and that's been the focus thus far. And the question really is this, you know, is the overall commission comfortable with broadening out the focus of this event to be more of a destination attraction, if you will, versus a local community-based event? And that subcommittee was comfortable with it, but I just want to make sure that the entire group has that moment to consider that and give some direction to the BTO in terms of how they plan to do this. Please, Ileana.
Yeah. Give like one of my best friends, Shane, and we were talking about like Aspen Gay Ski Week, and he was like, I wish.
Sorry.
Good mo-
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Hello, yes.
Thanks.
And we were talking about like Aspen Gay Ski Week, and he was like, just wish like Brett put on something that was bigger, so like I can actually meet more people in the state of Colorado. So I think that might be a really good option as well, making it more of a destination, because a lot of my friends will travel to a lot of these locations because they really do like it, and they like meeting new people, and so I think it's a really good option.
I second that. I think it's a great option. I think there's two reasons why it's necessary. One of which is that I think it's important, like you guys just said, to make our community, to highlight our community's inclusivity when it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community. I also think it's different or important to bring different voices to the table. And the only way that we're going to do that is if we open it up outside of our community. I do think it should be bigger, but we're working on that. So as things grow, I think there'll be a lot more for people to travel for, perhaps a parade. But yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it's important.
I think it's really great just to, with this event in particular, to open the door and to begin welcoming people into our community. Because there are a lot of businesses in town that have pride flags up 365 days a year. They never take them down. We are a loving and welcoming community, and you know, we are more than just winter. Like, we are summer events as well. And for anyone to want to come here, whatever their background, I want everyone to feel loved and no one to feel like, oh, they just did this event, but it's just because of this month. It's like, no, all communities are welcome here at all points in time. So I think that that's a good way to open the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
As
I
well.
think that's what Gay Ski Week does for Aspen. It's much more than the week when it comes to their reputation in the gay community. So
I also just brought a point, allyship is really important to highlight as well. In the gay community, in the African-American community, in everybody's community, allyship is very important. And I think that's something that you guys should keep on your radar as well.
wonderful. Thank you all.
So much. And feel free to get in touch if you think of questions later on. You know where to find us.
And I'll circle back with any info I can dig up on our paid markets right now. And I jotted down a couple really great and helpful ideas. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I know Allie's gonna do some trivia for Pride Week.
Perfect.
So,
Love that.
If you had anything that you wanted her to include, potentially let me know. and I can reach out
Absolutely.
to her.
Yeah. It's coming up.
June's right.
Round the corner.
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies. It was amazing.
Mhm.
And then we will go into our subcommittee discussions.
Cool.
So first we had celebrate diversity and community outreach and engagement. We had a joint kind of meeting just for time this month, and that went really well, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So we got to meet with the BTO and plan a little bit more about Pride, and again, continue to work with Dean Nelson, who was a consultant from last year, who has also been a previous consultant for Breckenridge Ski Resort when they did their Breck Pride 2 years ago. So it's great to continue to have him in the process and continue working with us now that he does know more about the community.
Mhm.
Hopefully that relationship will continue to blossom and grow.
Mhm.
And then Brooke was, oh yeah, there's a resource guide that was included in this. It was just some information that had just gotten kind of not spoken about in a little bit. So we're just trying to keep working with our equity lens for creating events and just information to share with partners.
Mhm.
So when they're throwing events, making sure that all parties are considered.
Mhm.
So we just brought that draft guide back into this packet for everyone to look at. So we think that can be really helpful. I know when we had talked about it previously, we always remembered to mention that we don't know everything.
Mhm.
And this will be another living document that we have and continuing to grow and looking for feedback on it from our partners when they throw events, if they were to use it, hopefully, so that we can continue finding parts of our community that aren't being reached. And then what else? Women's History Month is now.
Mhm.
And we were working on a Q&A video with Larissa from Breck History.
It's changed a
Potentially.
little bit. We are going to highlight Alice Milne, who was a visionary, strong woman of willpower here in Breckenridge, who willed 2 lots in kitty corner from the library, and it is a welcoming town park where my office happens to be in an old house. And Brooke, I've got a script and slides to share with you, and we'll see if we can get that done. Yeah,
That sounds awesome.
yes.
I love that.
There have been so many just great women throughout Breckenridge's history. It's awesome to get
Mhm.
another opportunity to highlight one. And I know that we're looking forward to creating more community engagement and highlighting more members of our community. So it'd be, again, just another great way to highlight some women in our community and show the growth and progression that the town's taken over the years. And so-
Yeah, and I like that Brooke has asked for more contemporary and modern people to in our community. So
I love that.
Yeah, and Brooke will also take this on and continue working with the Summit Daily. And I think that'll be a great continuation and a great process, and hopefully we'll create some more engagement and I guess, diverse businesses and opportunities. And it's, I mean, it's always great to learn more about your other community members here in town. And sometimes the love for everyone isn't shown. So for the chance to nominate someone for not necessarily an award, but just for a feature and recognition, I think.
Cool
would be-
people. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got, I mean, we have so many amazing people and just the town and this room as well. You guys are all really great. I'm very thankful to have met you all, and to everyone else out there. You guys are great too.
Motion to approve.
And then unfortunately, Elsa and Christy aren't here, but they're also a part of those two subcommittees, Celebrate Diversity and Community Outreach and Engagement. And it was brought up for April to do some education about neurodivergency. So just kind of learning about how we can be an ally to that part of our community as well, and to members of that community.
And that's something that Elsa specializes in.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Elsa is very knowledgeable in that, so I look forward to learning more from her.
Mhm.
And then we were thinking about a few different options as far as maybe wearing like a certain color or finding like a symbol that represented neurodivergency. And then if willing, if anyone wanted to share a story about that, to just to help people learn, because I do not know much about that community or how it affects people. But I would love to be able to read or watch a video and gain a better understanding for myself. And that would also help with, you know, just the process of becoming an ally and learning what people need, and I guess how we can, because we've done like the ADA research for the town, so maybe that could shed some new lights on some things we didn't imagine.
Mhm.
And then there were a few discussions about the blending of a few commission goals, and I know that was brought up by Joe Twan. So that's something we're going to talk more in June. We're going to talk more about in our next meeting, and I look forward to that, just to continue to make sure that we're all on track and a bit more linear, especially if we have some overlap, we can streamline things a little bit. And then if Sylvia or Joe Twan wouldn't mind telling a little bit more about the community education and influence meeting.
Sylvia, I was like, can I get my notes in order, Sylvia? I'm trying to get my notes in order.
I can read the notes here if you wouldn't mind, but since I wasn't there, I don't have any more insight onto those things.
Yeah, well, our last meeting was kind of more going over what we wanted to do as a subcommittee and kind of revising our goals. We discovered that they come in line with like doing other work in other of the subcommittees. So we discussed about the possibility, do we want to kind of combine community education and influence with community outreach and engagement? We were wondering if maybe there's more within those goals that kind of separate these things and we want to keep them separate, or is there something that we could combine and work as like making both of those subcommittees into one?
Mhm.
So I think we're trying to get that into our next meeting and see what we really wanted to move forward with. At this point, we had lost some of our subcommittee members and we were getting new ones like Joe Twan. And so we just wanted to kind of reconvene and set what are our next steps at this subcommittee that we should do. Lori unfortunately was not able to attend, so we still need to get her opinion and her thoughts into this. But yeah, I think that's where we kind of stand.
It was
Sylvia?
nice to see you join our meeting, our committee meeting, and now I see the see the point. It was nice to, nice to see you there. What did you, did that support your ideas of combining the groups, or did we, make you shy away? I
Well,
mean,
I didn't think we have enough time when I joined your subcommittee meeting
Uh.
to really discuss any of this. I think you guys had a pretty thick agenda for that meeting that we didn't get a chance to talk. And that's one thing that got me thinking is if we combine these two subcommittees, is it going to be too much to get through? Is it better to keep them separate to maybe attack some of those goals a little easier or more direct?
Mhm.
I don't know, something to think about for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Cool.
Because Joe Twan's is the only like liaison between the
Yeah.
two.
Right.
It seemed too, I found some of those notes too, and then I was looking over in meeting notes for today as well. It just seemed like with the two, well, I think it's like three subcommittees now that I'm crossing over a little bit. But in terms of like the community outreach and then the community influence and education, it just seemed a little bit like one was a little bit, one of these subcommittees that I'm sitting on was a little bit more inward focused, while the other was a little bit more outward focused. And so, yeah, anxious with the whole entire group to kind of start to have those discussions. To your point, Jordan, so that we can be a little bit more linear and focused in the work that we are trying to do.
Well, thank you, Joe Twan, for noticing that and being a part of both. So I'm not really too sure if there was much crossover before. So I love your perspective now being involved, and thank you, Sylvia, for hanging out in our meeting for a little bit. So yeah, I
Happy
would
to
love
contribute.
I think a lot of the reason why this kind of got all like put into one is you guys have the same committee members for Celebrate Diversity and
Mhm.
Outreach and Engagement.
Mhm.
So I think it was easier to find a like a meeting place and where everybody was all together. So if we do want to move forward in combining these, that's okay. It's yeah, we just really want to make sure what is it that we're working towards,
Mhm.
and can we get it all like
In the
through
same
the
day.
same meeting? Yeah.
yeah,
Can it be put in an email?
I do know with like the community education and influence, with that initial take up of like the Equity University,
Mhm.
and then the outreach and engagement, our focus more was the like combination with Celebrate Diversity and how to output the events from that. So like that was that connection in that group, and then the separation was more on the like how do we educate our community in the other.
Right.
So the one was more focused on the production of events from the Celebrate Diversity group and the diversity calendar. And so I think that was just the initial difference
Yeah,
that we had.
but I think it's this conversation is like pointing out that it's kind of evolving, which is kind of cool. But
Yeah. Yeah, I think because with the overlap and I guess with it all, like whatever was developed through community education and influence would have been output through community outreach. and
Mm.
engagement, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think that was, I don't want to say the output for all of the subcommittees, but I think everything kind of does funnel through that
I think you're
subcommittee
right. Mhm.
because that was going to be where our planning was for the year.
Mhm.
So I could see, I guess both sides of combining them or keeping them separate, but I do think the community outreach and engagement subcommittee was where everything was going to be pushed through anyway.
Yeah, you're right. That's what my understanding was, besides Celebrate Diversity and like the Pride stuff, but yeah.
So Taj, to your point about the evolution of these subcommittees, I found some more notes that I'd taken. Perhaps it's an opportunity for us as a group to review the goals, tactics, and metrics, not only of community influence and education, but perhaps some of the other subcommittees as well.
I think that's a great idea. For sure. There's a point that I want to make, but it's going to be for other matters. So just remind me. Remind me. Yeah. But yes, it's to this point.
perhaps from here, it may make sense to schedule and like give everyone a chance to think about this and have another subcommittee meeting and then bring this topic back
Yeah.
at our next meeting and have that discussion.
Yeah.
Something else that like Taj, I was trying to, Sylvia, I appreciate you bringing this up and making sure that we, have these conversations. I think it is an important one to think through. So thanks for bringing that forward.
Sweet.
And then Sylvia, I'm gonna put you back on the spot.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, if you have time, just for the Immigration Rights and Advocacy Subcommittee.
Immigration rights, let's think.
Oh.
Okay, so we got to meet with early childhood education department, and we talked about funding for preschool and younger kids, and how we got a really neat presentation. We got one of the girls to come talk to us, and I really enjoyed it. Shannon was there, and we had the Mountain Mentors group, and Isauda was there. Nice. So we kind of just learned a lot of how the program works, what is accessible to families in Summit County, and I think what came out of that meeting is that moving forward is we want to educate people more about what's available and how it's not, like, there's a lot of funding that is not being utilized. And I think one of the harder obstacles that we've encountered is there's not enough spaces with all of our daycares for people that could possibly be applying for the funding. There's not a space for the child. So there is 2 new daycares that opened in Summit County recently that I didn't know about. One's in Copper, and the other one's, is it Silverthorne? Yeah, Wildflower. So with that, hopefully a lot of new spots open, and then people know more about this funding. There's different levels of it. There's within our Summit County district, you can say. There's also state level funding, and there's different programs that people can apply for. So we just want to make sure to push that information out. We talked about maybe like how there's meetings called Kinder Roundup, where people that are applying for kindergarten or starting to think about putting their children in there get all the information, like info sessions, and if we should help put on an info session for earlier options. So yeah, it was a really interesting meeting. I really enjoyed learning about all this. And yeah, that's going to be, we were working a lot with translation with our previous subcommittee. Now that the pocket talks are out and working, this is going to be our new goal and moving forward. Yeah.
Just because the question came up in my head when you were talking about it. Do they have a way of like allotting a certain percentage of slots within their daycare to, I don't want to say underprivileged families, but families who then need that additional funding?
So one of the big things that we spoke about is they don't have any control of who gets a spot into the daycare, but once a child is accepted or have a location, they can help with all the funding through it. Yeah, it's what was surprising to me is that most people don't know, like, the earning rate in Summit County can be quite high. So most people, they're like, oh, I would never qualify for that kind of help.
Yeah.
But in reality, the mark is a little higher than, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, so I can't refer back to that. But yeah, what they can cover is almost up to 60% of
The care.
the care. Yeah, which is really nice.
Yeah.
We also spoke a lot about how, as immigrant communities, look for childcare outside of these daycares. One, it's more affordable, and 2, like, they can find the space, but most of these caregivers aren't certified.
Yeah.
So we discussed a little bit of that as well, and how can we help get them to, not that they're not being well taken care of, but maybe a more equal opportunity.
Yes,
or
I
accessible.
totally
Yeah.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so that was kind of our focus for that last meeting.
Do they have bilingual educators?
They do, yeah. And it kind of depends on the center, but yeah, the really neat part about this is that before all of the like funding and scholarship was kind of separate by the towns. Now it's one place. They can just go to one area and they can get help there, which is really nice.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you so much. And then Eliana, now if you don't
Yeah,
mind for civic
we did
engagement.
not, what?
Yeah, civic engagement.
Yeah, we did not have a meeting. We're still looking to get it all scheduled.
Thanks for that update.
And then Scott or Helen, would you like to speak more about the upcoming council discussions?
Sure. The next council meeting is next Tuesday, the 26th. There are a number of items on there for the legislative approvals. So we talked a bit about the demolition by neglect ordinance, which is going to affect secondary structures essentially around within the historic district or the conservation district, just to make sure that they remain standing. So it's essentially requiring homeowners to do something to stop them from falling down. They don't need to be turned into, lights and foundations and that kind of stuff, but just to keep them from falling and declining, collapsing. The development agreement you may have read for Breckenridge Grand Vacations has been delayed until the 26th. Please.
May I ask a question about the demolition by neglect
Yes.
and requiring these homeowners to support their secondary structures? Have you, I know that there is a possibility of matching grant dollars for these people. Have you considered what the reaction by the property owners in the historic district who do not have a secondary structure that there is funding available for, how they're going to react to town funds being given to these people with the historic structure? If I had a property in town, a historic property in town, and only had the primary structure, I would say, well, why is town money going to support these people who happen to have ramshackle shed?
Yes. That discussion was pretty, it was across the board. So there were different opinions up from the town council individuals. Some people felt like it was entirely appropriate because the goal was to character of the secondary structures in town, and felt like it was a reasonable way to expend grant funds to do that. Others felt like there should be some sort of need basis or kind of other kind of standards to decide whether someone should receive that funding. So that issue, that topic exactly was that issue. And what was decided at that meeting was that the town staff, the community development staff will come back with a kind of more refined concept. But that was the heart of the issue was, does
Yeah.
this seem equitable to other entities? People say, wait a minute, I didn't get anything, or people who live outside the historic district and
Right.
maybe they have a shed that's, most of them are inside the town core, but the decision was made basically to table it until they could get some more clarity on who was eligible, how much, and kind of if it was appropriate, and see if council can come together on a consensus basis and decide that.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's just one of those things that
Yes.
woke me up one night. It's like, wait a minute. Thank you.
Sorry, so the Breckenridge Grand Vacation, you may have read in the paper, there was supposed to be a first reading at this prior meeting that was delayed based on a number of edits that were going to be made to the development agreement. I think there were probably, I'm just estimating, maybe a dozen, maybe 15 different kind of edits that have to occur. So the idea is that will get revised and come back to council next week for consideration of first reading. There is, actually, this is a pretty consistent theme. There was also, regarding defensible space, there was a ordinance that came to kind of help protect help homes protect their, themselves from, from fires coming in, and matching the standards that exist from the kind of the nationwide standards regarding protecting homes. The town has proposed staff has proposed coming up with something kind of in between. So it kind of preserves some of the tree cover that exists throughout town and some of the important vegetation that felt like gives community character to the town. And so it's not quite everything being accepted at the red, white, and blue side of things, sort of accepting everything lock, stock, and barrel. So the idea is to adjust that to kind of match the town's aesthetic, if you will. And so the same idea, council said, well, why don't you come back with another version of this and kind of narrow in the focus. I had a few questions that were pretty deep in there. So same thing, that'll come back at the 26th for a first reading. And then if you know, the Entrada parcel is the parcel, let's call it just north of 7-Eleven. So across County Road 450 is that vacant parcel that used to have the Quonset hut on it. That is what's called the Entrada parcel. So part of BGV's plan is they're required to provide some percentage of housing. I believe it's 30% of housing that's generated by their hotel proposal. So they have to provide beds to accommodate the employees that will be generated by the new hotel up at the ski area. So they're targeting that parcel. That parcel is currently in the county. So in order to make that happen, they need to annex it into town and then do a bunch of other steps to get there. So this first reading next week will be two different things, both the annexation and the zoning. It'll basically kind of pave the way, or at least be a step along the process to bring that into town, to move forward with some workforce housing occurring on that parcel.
That's great.
It's a little bit convoluted, but that's the gist of it. And then beyond that, that's just the legislative. Beyond that, we have the new town website demonstration. Huge kudos to both Brooke and Helen and Annette and others that are working really, really hard to get the town website converted. It's looking really, really good. So we're going to do a quick demonstration with council so they can understand what it does and its functions, and go from there.
That's awesome.
Yep. And then there's an irrigation discussion. So the town has, there's a Summit County requirement that watering on certain days is allowable. So let's say you're based on your address, you may water Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I believe Sunday's the day. I can't remember the exact days, but 3 days a week you're allowed to on one side of the street or one type of address. And so we the town are trying to adjust our outdoor watering restrictions to allow to match throughout the county. So the people who run irrigation across the county know that, hey, if you have an odd address, again, odd numbered address, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's your days. And then if you have an even address, it's Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or something along those lines. And so we're trying to match it so it's consistent across the county. It does have some benefits to our water system as well, in terms of when zones are turned on and when water is drawn, how it affects the actual water system as well. So it will be beneficial. It'll help with conservation efforts for watering is really the goal there. Please.
Could like a step 2 or future step for that be based around like natural precipitation as well? Because I do see like it'll rain and then there'll be automated like waters.
I do see that.
So my understanding is that already exists, that you are supposed to have a meter or let's say a sensor, so that if it is watering, then your irrigation should not come on. I believe that's part of our current town code already. So whether it works all the time, that's another question. I totally.
911, you see that.
So yes, I think it's a good point to make in terms of we need to make sure that those things function and that we have it in the code that way. Because truly, when we have those wet events, and you're right, when the irrigation comes on, it seems that it's certainly not what anyone wants. It's just a waste of water. So
Yeah.
yes. And then just other ones that are quickly just on discussion items regarding planning matters. The fractional ownership code changes. This basically limits where you can have a fractional ownership or timeshare entity, certain places in town or not. So that's what that's focused on. Haven't dug too much into that one, but that's the gist of that discussion. Inclusionary zoning basically talks about ways to create more workforce housing based on development within town. So right now, as I mentioned, when a large commercial property like BGV is building a hotel, there's a metric by which they have to create housing to support that infrastructure.
Mhm.
So in other words, housing for the employees to serve that infrastructure. That does not exist on the residential side or any other types of building. And so they're looking at ways that they may be able to generate more workforce housing funds through other forms of development.
I love that.
So I guess with that, is it generating workforce housing just for themselves, or is there also an included percentage for the town?
I believe, again, this is sort of a conceptual discussion at this point. There's nothing on as far as here's what's being proposed. So I don't have the specific answer to that. Right now, we do have some voter approved tax funds that funnel money to housing projects across the community, across the county, and also within the town. But this one specifically, I don't know the answer to that, whether it would be to a large pot, or I don't believe if you're building if they were to get there, if you're building a residential home, I don't believe they're saying that money is going to go to an individual to serve that home. If that makes sense. It would go to the pot, if that makes sense. The broader kind of workforce housing fund that we use to construct things. So
Yeah.
that would be my answer. Whereas it's easier to say, again, a large hotel creates the need for 100 jobs, therefore we need to find homes for this many. It's
Mhm.
harder to kind of say that specifically to a residential building, for example.
Yeah, because it was the Entrada part, like, is that gonna be like apartments though, right? Or is that
Studios in that case. And so once again, I believe it was in the area of 40 units was my recollection, 42 units, I think it was, for the Entrada. And like I said, that's specifically to house the number of employees that'll serve. I mean, they don't need to be one-to-one, like that person is going to have to work here, but enough beds to provide housing to offset the new demand on the community as a whole.
It does. I guess I was just just more so for the people that aren't gonna work for BGV in that hotel, but just other people who serve the
The
community.
community, that also
Yeah.
work in the community. So like
Yeah.
workforce housing, not like BGV housing or whatever that is.
Yes. So
Employee housing versus workforce housing.
Yeah, so if it was like, we're gonna build this many unit and this percentage will satisfy our new workers,
Right.
does the town have like a tax for like, okay, well, instead of making it for sale, would like this percentage be under a certain percent, like AMI for other people who work in the town as well, just at other businesses?
there were additional units on the Entrada number. So the required number, I believe, is in the 30s, and they've added up to 42. So there are additional units that would serve the broader workforce on the
Mhm.
Entrada as proposed.
Mm.
There's also housing over on what's called the Gold Rush lot, or the North Gold Rush lot. So that's proposed to come online in a few years as well. It'll be more dorm style, as I understand it. So it'll be 6 bedrooms around a common area, and they each have their own individual bed and restroom, but around a common area. So there'll be multiple units of that as well. And that will not be tied specifically to BGV only employees, as an example. So yes, that'll be a broader kind of benefit for rentals. Please, sorry, go ahead, Shannon. She knows way more about this.
I had a question. Do you want me to refrain until you kind of plug us in a little bit? Okay. Well, actually, it's not really a question. It's just like an observation as I'm listening to this housing. It doesn't really, it sounds like it's one dimensional. It sounds like it's eligible for one type of person, someone who's single, someone who doesn't have family, someone who is not looking for a single family home. It just sounds like maybe studios or, communal living, which doesn't necessarily sound to me very equitable if we're thinking about the diversity of our workforce. So I think that's really important for us to consider as a community, because if I had a husband or a wife and kids, I don't think a studio would work for me, nor do I think that a communal living situation would work for me too. So when we're thinking about the housing that we're providing, I think it needs to be brought to the attention of like what type of percentage of workforce do we have? And who are we catering to when we're providing that housing?
So, I'll try, I don't, that's on, or not on, or matters.
Testing. That one I think is on.
it's
Oh, no,
on.
that's on.
It's on. It's on. So a couple of things on the dorm style units, those are they're gonna end up being master lease to Vail Resorts. So probably more than the Entrada, the dorm style units will be for a, a pretty specific group of people that are working for the ski area, maybe some nonprofits in the summer, but primarily for Vail Resorts. The way the employee mitigation piece works is the entity is required to provide 35% of of this housing, right? They're going to have X number of employees and say they have to provide, say, housing for 35%. It doesn't actually mean that those units will be filled by their employees because, they may have people that already have housing. So then those units will be opened up to the general public because they're going to want to have them filled so that they're bringing in the money. So it sounds like they're mitigating their employees, but they're, essentially providing the housing that it would take for those employees, and then it does get opened up to the general public. And they don't fall into our sort of cache of housing units. They're, with some developments, they have to do, like, they're supposed to mitigate some of that housing on the actual site where they build. Or they can, we can work with them to mitigate off-site. They can build or they can buy market rate units and then deed restrict them. So it's really trying to create workforce housing in some shape or fashion because of what they're creating. And I think Scott hit it on the nail on the head when it came to the inclusionary zoning piece about, even though it's residential development, you need people to build houses, right? And so where do those people live, right? Where do the construction workers live? Where do the plumbers live, the electricians? And so, looking at ways to make those developments also contribute towards housing. And then to your question, that housing needs assessment showed what kind of units we need of different types. So we need for sale units and we need a variety of rental units. What they were trying to do with this development, I think, was trying to get as many units onto that parcel as they could. And understanding, if BGV people are filling those units, there is a need for that studio kind of level. And then, we all talked about Larkspur and the huge interest there was in that particular property, but those had more varied unit types. And then what is now going to be Verde Vistas, because we had to change the name of Alta Verde. So it's not going to be called Verde Vistas, but that new building that's coming on is also going to have varied unit types. And so there is an awareness within our housing folks that we do need a variety, right? Because you're exactly right. People, if you've got a family, a studio isn't going to work for you. So, yeah. Pardon?
The Stables Lottery.
So the Stables Lottery, there's an open house on Wednesday at BGVCC down in the Hopeful and Discovery rooms. And I think that lottery opened on the 15th. Yep.
And that's going to be duplexes, triplexes, and single family homes.
Yep. Yep. And we will have translation. So, that's another one is it's 61 units total. So it is fairly limited in the number of units, and that we know there's a lot of interest in those single family units, which is why we're going to build out block 11, and that will be for sale, single family with some ADUs. So again, it's that trying to find a way to get in every unit type to meet the needs of as many people as we can. And then I think, Jay, you asked about the AMIs, and I think Scott did. I think he answered that too, where like Entrada will be a variety of AMIs averaging out at 100%. So there'll be some below and some above, but the average will be 100%. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shannon?
And the last item on there is just talking about the, so we have to do public hearings for any town project. And so the food and beverage delivery concept that we've discussed before, that goes before council as a public hearing to make sure that everyone understands what the plan is, what the goals are, and then kind of present as it currently stands, what the proposal looks like. So, yeah, like I said, it's a temporary structure on the horseshoe portion of the Tiger Dredge lot. So if you're coming down Adams Pass, Whiskey Star and the Riverwalk, as you pull into that broad Tiger Dredge parking lot, the horseshoe is the portion on the left. Typically employee parking. So we're trying to find other places to put that, but that's where that facility is currently proposed to go, at least in the coming couple of years.
Yeah, it's like that corner of like F lot.
Yeah,
I know
Like-
where it is, but what is the horseshoe?
That's just
it's a horseshoe shaped
Oh.
spot. That's why we call it the horseshoe. Sorry.
I thought you were talking about the restaurant,
No.
the horseshoe. I was like, it's already, I'm confused.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the horseshoe portion of the lot. So if you
Right.
come on Adams on your left, that portion basically becomes a
Yeah,
temporary structure for a couple of years, see how the pilot program works, and then we'll go from there.
okay.
So the public hearing is on the 26th. So if you want to tune in and hear what it's going to look like and, kind of the scale of this thing and again, time frame and that sort of operational approach, that'll be what's presented for council review.
Is, of course, a rumor that FedEx, UPS are filing a suit against that delivery program in Vale. Is that?
So the update on that, at least as much as I know, is that suit has been filed. So so FedEx and UPS have basically, they're challenging Vale's right to require them to use that system as they pull into the town of Vale. So that's been, as I understand, basically that decision has been held off, or at least it's pending kind of the lawsuit, what's going to happen with that. So that has not been implemented. What town of Vale has been doing is food and beverage, and they continue to do that. That has not been challenged. And from the town of Breckenridge's side of things, there was the pilot project is really specifically for food and beverage only, has not addressed package delivery, if you will. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. So the primary goal here in town is safety,
Right.
basically because we have a lot of idling vehicles,
Oh,
trucks,
man,
delivery
I am
trucks all over
all
the place.
for it.
Yeah, and delivery and on the Riverwalk as well. And so that's the primary goal for this project, to see if we can stand it up, reduce the number of trucks in town
Yeah.
and some of the safety, address some of the safety concerns. And yes, as an offshoot, it will be more efficient potentially for, food and beverage delivery to different restaurants. What they've seen in Vale is that the food and beverage, the restaurants really appreciate it because it not only is it safer, but it's actually more convenient for them as well. Sorry, Eliana.
I think last week you mentioned it was voluntary. Is it voluntary for the distributors or for the individual restaurants?
Voluntary, both for the delivery companies, so the Shamrocks of the world or Cisco's, and it's also voluntary on the restaurant side. So those who are interested in trying it out can do so, and they'll see how it goes. That is intentional that the pilot is voluntary.
I think it'll be great. Having gone to the last coffee talk with Kelly and Eric, and getting the opportunity to hear from Dick Carlton, because he actually went out and visited the Vale site and got to see it firsthand. He spoke very highly of it, and it seems like the efficiency of it and the opportunity to keep some of the larger vehicles outside of town, especially during our really busy times, I think will be really great. Just because right now there is no like time scale on deliveries. So just when you're in the middle of the afternoon and there is a big semi in town, it does create a bit of a cumbersome opportunity, both for people who live here and know where they want to be, and for our guests who don't know where they're trying to get to, and having to navigate some of the one-way roads in town. So.
Have it stood up hopefully in early July. That's the goal in July. Let's say that in general. The other thing we notice is that, especially during the winter months, when the when the snow stacks up and it just gets tighter and tighter, then you've got
Yeah.
an idling truck, and then you've got cars trying to pass around, and it's
Can't
just
see 'cause it's
yeah,
like piles of snow.
it's become an acute
Oh,
acute problem for us. I
Trash
think, as a
pickup
community.
gets delayed. Yeah.
And
Actually, that's one of the things that's worth mentioning. The target right now is food and beverage at the moment. But really in short order, the goal, and this is directly from council, really want to see trash, recycling, composting, and cooking oil pick up as well. So that's sort of, we can get the structure placed and the kind of the processes running, and then that'll be the next step, will really be to focus on those types of services. So that all the, food, beverage, trash, recycling, compost, cooking oil, all can be handled in a different way than it currently is.
I think getting something like that started in a lesser snow month or months will be an opportunity to see its efficiency and to kind of get all of the wheels greased and make sure everything's going to work properly before we do get snow, because that is such a long period of our year. It would be a little bit more difficult getting something like that, especially started in like December. So I think think it'll be nice to kind of, get everyone's like test runs and stuff out of the way. So when town does pick up and the weather does change, there'll at least be a plan and everyone will kind of know how things work.
That's what I have. Welcome any questions or other thoughts that are coming on.
Always interesting.
And
Other matters thing.
then we are on to other matters.
I was just thinking about this morning, and we haven't done a DEI training with Monica or anyone since 2020. And we have so many new members. So I was thinking we should maybe discuss potentially doing that. What do we think?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's important. Because I'm pretty sure me and you and Carol were the only people that are still on the, right. So we should think about that. It doesn't have to be discussed right now. I know we're short on time, but just in general, something to keep in the back of our minds, to maybe bring up at our next meeting. And then another thing that I was gonna plug in is that, I don't know if you probably don't, but I work for the county now. I'm a planning technician. And we're working on our comprehensive plan. And within the comprehensive plan, I've personally been reading a lot of articles that are in relation to DEI and the comprehensive plan. And a lot of the theme that were in these articles was livability and what that looks like for our community, as far as different types of zoning for housing, not just single family, but also like accessibility to like grocery stores and different types of transportation, which I think our community is really good about recognizing, but I just think it's important for us to think about that. And also, if you guys do have any plugins, they do open houses for the county that ask for input about the comprehensive plan. And I'm hoping one of my coworkers can come next into one of our next meetings and kind of talk about it more, but just figured I would let you know. So, yeah.
That's great, Tasha. If you can we'd be happy to put that on the next agenda. We will have, as I said, is planning to come to the next meeting as well.
Mhm.
So, but we'd be happy if you want to give me the right contact, we can.
Yeah,
we can line
totally.
them up.
Yeah, I will connect you.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, the DEI portion of it, I think there was a very limited member of us on the commission still,
Mhm.
who have met with Monica.
Yeah.
And have gone through a more formal introduction.
Yeah, it's like a more like a more educational, like very, yeah.
And it's like, because she's worked in a lot of varying communities.
Mhm.
So I think her education and her knowledge is always well welcomed. And I think with that, like, I've loved having all the new eyes on everything. And I think with like Sylvia and Jotuan's notice of some of our crossover in our ideas that we've had before, it's awesome.
Mhm.
Just because like we've been working on this for so long, we might have been just a little like too close to it to realize where we can grow.
Mhm.
So I think that reevaluation will be really nice.
To add to that, I think it should be almost like a standard practice, having like a yearly training, not maybe just like for town members, but for us, like as
I
a
think so too.
commission.
Mhm.
Where I work, we do like OSHA training and all that every year, like even CPR, you have to get
Right.
certified every
Ladder
year, no matter,
safety.
exactly. So
Mhm.
I think just to make it a practice, a good practice would be to have that training scheduled
Yeah.
once a year.
Mhm.
And then to piggyback off of that, with our university program that we were trying to do with that subcommittee, I think whoever we do choose to do this training with, whether it's Monica or someone other than that, we can look into doing, like getting
Curriculum.
more research to provide for our university program,
Mhm.
whether that's going to be what videos look like, what content it should have, all that kind of
Online
information.
seminars, what you do.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of your point, Monica is someone we worked with in 2020. She's amazing. She knows all the right things. But also to plug in my mom, she's a trainer for National Association of Partnership and Equity, as well as creates a lot of curriculum for them and just on the side. So if we wanted to use her in a different light, even for curriculum or just maybe some advisor, I was like, what's that word? Advisorship. Yeah. She would be a great resource. So just throwing that out there.
Y'all know who Monica, can you give me the last name of Monica?
Shannon, what's Monica's last name? Oh, Williams.
Yeah.
She works for whom? Sorry.
Who does she work? The
That
the equity. I was like, I think it's the yeah.
Thank you.
The Equity Project has allyship training also, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know if it's worth mentioning in this area, but we also had our maybe one of my very first meeting, because I didn't get to meet Monica, but I think I joined like once we were finishing with her. So maybe I sat in with one of the conversations with her, but we also had our town lawyer come in and give us a good practice rundown of
Oh.
how to run the commission. So I think that a good refresher for
Yeah.
that might be nice too.
That one I can speak to, and that is planned for when we have a new council. Seated in the second meeting in April is when the new council will be seated. She's gonna start with that training there and then broaden out to all commissions is the plan. So she'll work specifically with the council first, and then every commission will get that same level of kind of support and training about here are the norms and here are the approaches that we take with our commissions and how we manage them.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah.
Does Jotan, do you have any other matters?
I do not.
Okay, awesome. Well, then I would love to adjourn today's meeting. Now I need a second.
Second motion to adjourn.
Thank you so much, everyone. It's been great meeting and talking with you all. And if there's any, oh wait, we didn't ask for public comment. If there's any public comments, send us an email. We will make sure to get to that in our next meeting.
Sorry to the.
Or in the meantime, if there's anything that we can respond to, we'll do our best. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for everybody's time today. Sorry I missed y'all in person.
Okay. Off to see the wizard.